I always start uh, by asking my guests to tell us a little bit about themselves and their experience, and then we'll get right into the topic. So, for those who don't know, Mareto is a friend, well-known pollster, and just someone who knows a heck of a lot about Latino voter engagement. So, Matt, tell us a little bit how you got started in this field and what you're seeing right now in 2026 midterm elections.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. It's been, first, I'll say, just wonderful working with Catherine and the full team at Latino Victory for so many years. They've been great partners in this and supported our research and also our Latino engagement. And so that's an important part of all of this is that we need partners on the ground in the community, and Latino Victory has certainly been at the top of that. So thank you. I guess I've been doing this for a while now. It seems like it just started, but I started my research as an academic, as a scholar and a professor. I was doing research on Latino voting patterns, and as we were doing that, we found out that a lot of the people in DC, a lot of the mainstream pollsters, they were ignoring the Latino community, or they weren't asking our questions accurately. And so myself and my business partner Gary Segura, we were both, just Latino academics, and we started doing polling and focus groups and research and working with groups like Latino Victory, like Unidos, like Mi Familia Vota, groups that wanted and valued that. We were able to start elevating more research and just more data and trends and facts about the Latino community. And so we've been at it for a while now. Had the pleasure of working on everything from small city council races and working with groups on the ground to the 2020 presidential and the Biden Harris campaign and many others. So it's been a long process, but our passion, I think, stays the same. Like, what we're about is accurate data of Latinos, dispelling myths and using that data to tell the truth about our community and what we're seeing. The last thing I'll say is just to your last point, 2026. Wow, the Latino community is really starting to get engaged in a way that was unsure after the inauguration of Trump 2.0. That was very scary times for many in our community for those first few months, the ICE raids, the other authoritarian measures. But now we're starting to see that elections are coming. New Jersey, Virginia, the Texas primary, now California just had its primary. Record high Latino turnout for these special elections and primaries. We're seeing a lot of Latino engagement right now.
For sure. And we're going to talk about that momentarily, but you raise a point that's very close to my heart in this moment. Just this week, on Monday, I was in LA for the people's hearing on immigration enforcement. And this was the third in a series that we started in Minneapolis, St. Paul, continued in Chicago, and then, of course, the third was Los Angeles. We're
Mhm.
looking to go to other cities which are currently being scheduled. And what we're listening to over and over is testimonies of individuals, businesses, communities that have been impacted in a way that really affects our community for generations to come. Right? In the people who have been detained, um, the human rights abuses, the people who have been disappeared, the children that would now grow without parents, right? U.S. citizen children that have been impacted in a real way, businesses that had to close their doors in this process, right? With the municipal surges of
Mm.
enforcement. And so it's a difficult time for our community. It's also Immigrants Heritage Month. This week, we also saw the 14th anniversary of DACA. We also saw the Republican Congress pass funding for additional interventions by DHS and ICE. And so there's so much that is incoming. And yet I find our community to be so resilient, right? And so, to your point about the November elections and the engagement, um, I see Latinos seeing this as a call to action and being more engaged than ever. And so we'll start with that. We just had primary elections in California. We saw Javier Becerra surge as a contender to be the first Latino governor of the state in 150 years. Tell me a little bit about California, and um, let's unpack what was the Latino engagement in this primary.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for recognizing that. It was such an exciting election out here. Um, it started out slow. There was a lot of questions. What would Latino engagement look like? And I tell you, we have a lot of early voting in California, and those first trends that were coming back, there wasn't a lot of Latino engagement at the beginning. And it picked up in those last 2 weeks, and really the last 5 days. We saw record surges in Latino turnout. Latino community was the only community, and we still had lower turnout than we needed for a primary. Okay. Our primary turnout still needs to grow, not just here in California, but everywhere. But the Latino vote was the only one that had higher voter turnout in 2026 than we did in 2022. And that started showing up about 3 days before we already started passing our 2022 numbers, and we sort of blew them out of the water at the end. It was the highest turnout for a primary election, and they're still counting ballots probably another 2 or 3 days. Those ballots coming in are younger people, Latinos, working class people. There was a huge surge in ballots the last few days, and that's why you saw that surge in Becerra when we're talking statewide. He started out in second place on election night. He looked very strong. Now he has surged to first. He is far ahead of the Republican opponent. And it was a great Latino turnout. We have a lot of work to do. We want to see our numbers get bigger. We want to see our actual turnout rates match the turnout rates of other groups. But it was really, putting it in perspective, it was a good Latino engagement, a good turnout for a primary election. And I think folks here in California are hoping that will then transfer to record high participation in November.
For sure. And obviously, Becerra is a historic win at the statewide level, but we also had a number of down ballot wins. And we look at, for example, Randy Villegas in the Central Valley.
Yes.
So this is a working class community, a lot of, farm workers. He is that district, right?
That's a
A
very important. Yeah, that's a very
high
important.
Latino representation within the electorate, but also high Latino turnout. Are there any lessons that we've learned from the California primaries that you think are going to impact the general election?
Well, I think you just mentioned too there with both Villegas and Becerra, which is when we have strong Latino candidates who are from the community, who know our community, that can energize and lead to turnout. So the California 22nd Congressional District, that has been one for a very long time, has been a potential. Could a Latino win? Could a Democrat win? And it had never materialized. It is right in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley Latino farm worker corridor. It's a majority Latino district. But for years, it had had low Latino turnout, low Latino engagement. This year, you saw with Randy campaign really running against a establishment Democrat that the Democratic Party had handpicked to run against him.
What a
Um,
mistake by the D trip not to believe in our Latino candidates, huh?
Really, it's a credit to groups, like Latino Victory and others who work for and with Latino candidates, strong Latino candidates from the community. And he came away with this thing easily at the end. It looked close again on election night. It looked very close, but as more ballots came in, the ones I was saying, as more ballots were counted, these ballots were Latino ballots. They were young people, and they were putting Villegas way out ahead. The same thing that happened with Becerra statewide. So we've seen that in a number of places here. We have the new Prop 50 map in California. There are a number of places, a number of congressional districts that now Latinos used to be trapped in some of these Republican leaning districts where there was never representatives that would speak to us. Now with the new Prop 50 map, Latino voters have an opportunity not just to elect our own candidates from our community, but even if there are a number of Asian candidates, white candidates, African American candidates, but there are huge 30, 40, 50% Latino populations there. It's a really, really exciting map. that is creating communities of interest and giving Latinos a chance to have more influence than we've ever seen in the congressional. So that's going to carry over to November. We're going to be talking a lot about not just Villegas and other Latino candidates, but how Latino voters are going to be deciding the future of the Congress, because we probably have, maybe here I'd say another 6 districts that can flip, not just the ones from Prop 50, but some of the others look very, very good because of Latino engagement.
For sure. And let me ask you this, right? Much has been said about Latino voter erosion and a shift, right, of Latino voters from Democratic voting bloc to Republicans, right? And especially as it relates to the election of Donald Trump in 2024.
Hmm.
What I saw, for example, in the primaries in Texas is that Latino voters were coming out in record numbers, but also that they were coming out in record numbers for Democrats, right? And so, is this something? I know votes are still being counted in California, but is this something that you are seeing in California as well?
Yeah, so two points on that. Great observation. First, let's just acknowledge, there was a shift in 2024. Trump did make inroads, very much so on economic working class promises. It was not on his immigration agenda at all. But Latinos were still hurting in 2024 from the economy, from the COVID economy that Trump really sort of mismanaged in the first place. But regardless of who was president at the time, Latinos were still hurting. We had a lot of working class voters, and Trump made these outlandish promises. And he did do better. It's a fact across the United States. Even here in California, we had places in the San Joaquin Valley, in the Inland Empire, that did transition maybe as much as 10 points. What we saw in 2 elections now, first was our Prop 50 election that I mentioned in November of 25. So about 9 months ago. In that election to decide the new control of the congressional districts, we saw record Latino turnout for a special election. And the yes on Prop 50 vote, which was assumably the Democratic vote, the yes on Prop 50 vote exceeded by far not just the Kamala Harris vote, but even the previous Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden votes. It was a record high Latino Democratic vote. We saw the same thing here now, and as you mentioned, Texas and other places. If you look at the data, we have the open primary, the jungle primary, as they call. But if you just add together the number of votes for the leading Democratic candidates, Becerra, Steyer, Porter, Mahan, and then Villaraigosa and the others, that gets you to about 100% and 99% of the Democrats. There were more Latino Democratic votes cast here than in any primary in California. And so we are seeing that reversion. Yes, there were some votes for Hilton, not quite as many for Bianco, who's a very conservative sheriff from the Inland Empire. There were Latino votes for Hilton. There's always going to be those. But we saw a significant decay in this, and it followed what we saw in Prop 50, a significant decay in the number of Latino Republican votes. And this raises the question, Catherine, and I know you guys work on this. Was it Latinos converting? Was it like some of those Trump voters? Or what we saw in Prop 50 was a lot of Latinos who were registered Republicans, they didn't vote. They had very low voter turnout. And the ones who had high voter turnout were younger Latinos, Democratic oriented, and independent Latinos who had much higher voter turnout. So both of those things are important, getting out the vote, but then also, if your campaign allows it, some sort of persuasion campaign targeted at Latinos.
And the fact is that Latino voters are persuasion voters. And I think that for a long time, the Democratic Party perhaps took us for granted. And so that's where we've seen the erosion in the Latino vote that, really started in 2016 and
Yep.
moved to what we saw in 2024. And then, of course, the Republican Party did its work, right? Did its job in advance of the 24 election. That's
Yeah.
where organizations like Latino Victory is very much engaged in, 365 organizing, right? To be able to um, make that shift back again, because we know that Latino voters need to be engaged around the issues that matter. But we are battling a very big monster, which is disinformation and
Mm,
misinformation amongst our communities. So, as it relates to the California election, did you see a lot of that? And what impact did it have that could potentially inform what we're going to see in November?
definitely. It is a perennial problem. It's something that's being targeted to Latinos, both English speaking, but also, as you know, there's a constant stream just in Spanish. A lot of it is originating outside of the country and being targeted into Latinos on WhatsApp, on YouTube, on other sources. And so we've continued to see that. One of the things I'm worried about here at this last election we just faced in California was two things. One had to do with Becerra. There was a lot of um, misstatements and misinformation brought up about his previous experience and his service, including as part of the Biden administration when he was the Secretary of Health and Human Services. There were just outlandish stories that were wrong. And one of the things that was unfortunate was that some of the other candidates were repeating those, not just the Republicans, but some of the other candidates were repeating those trying to get a leg up. And so it sort of got saturated for a while. Now, he did a good job of pushing back. And I think that could be a model for us. He pushed back and he explained these are just Trump talking points. These are not factually correct. And that seemed to resonate with voters, even independent voters, maybe even some Republican voters. The president is associated with misinformation and just making stuff up. And so I think that could be a model to possibly push back. The second thing that was very concerning was here in Los Angeles, and that had to do with Mayor Karen Bass's record on issues of crime and homelessness. Something that there's still a lot of work for Los Angeles to do in addressing homelessness, but it is factually true that she has brought homelessness down in Los Angeles by double digits 2 years in a row. And there is definitely a lot more work to do. When she took over as mayor, it was really out of control. There was a lot of homelessness. These are people in need, they needed services, and she addressed it. Um, there was just some outrageous stuff that was put together by one of her opponents, Spencer Pratt. You probably saw the news stories. He was using AI and he was asking his followers to create AI video clips about homelessness and Los Angeles deteriorating under Karen Bass. And that was really spreading. And it looked like he was gaining some momentum for a while. That I think is the next frontier, Catherine, that's even scarier than the disinformation you and I were battling in previous campaigns. The use of AI to get these very lifelike and realistic possible videos of candidates saying things with images to spread more disinformation is something that we're going to have to be more aware of going forward because it's very realistic. And that was spreading like wildfire here in California.
For sure. As a matter of fact, the use of AI is a topic of debate. Us right now and obviously responsible AI. So what is the average voter that already has mistrust of institutions, of parties, um, of the voting system even, right? And concern around the Voting Rights Act, eyes at the polls, and whether folks are going to be able to exercise their right to vote um in a legal way. Trust that the vote is secure. What does the average voter need to know um, about these upcoming elections? And are there any lessons from what happened in California? Did you see any disruptions? And how do we, as an organization, and others who are activists in the field, uh, react and prepare for what's coming?
I think this is probably the biggest challenge we have is, voters want access to information so they can understand everything from the election rules, where the polling places are, when they can vote, to understanding the candidates and what the candidates stand for. And so we have to make sure that that information being presented to voters is factual, is accurate, and is believable to the voters. Now we're confronting so much disinformation that we find sometimes in campaigns when we present factual information to voters, they're suspicious. You know, are you sure? Is that true? I heard something different. And so we need to find a way to cut through that and be able to give voters just reliable information that they can trust. The first point is just on the process. Okay. I can't say this enough. We have the most first time voters of any community by double or triple in the Latino community. After first time
And
voters,
growing.
we have the most second time voters. That this is only your second time ever voting. That might make up something like 40% of our electorate in the next election. 4 out of 10 are either first or second time ever voting. So the first thing that I always encourage is let's make sure we have factual information on the process. When does early voting start? How do you register? What do you need? What state do you live in? Do you need to bring a driver's license? Are you okay bringing any other form of ID? Maybe you don't need. How do you vote by mail? What are the rules? Why should you use a drop box instead of the postal service? Maybe we can talk about that with the new executive orders coming out and the just the politicization of the postal service. So just getting the basic information. Where's my local neighborhood precinct voting center? Getting that information out. It sounds kind of boring, but for many Latinos, because it is our first or second time voting, we need to have those reminders. And so I always encourage groups and campaigns just to make sure that your friends, your neighbor, your familia has just the basic nuts and bolts of how to vote, where to vote, and whatnot. We find that when we do focus groups of non-voters, a lot of people will say like, "Oh, I didn't realize. I thought the election was only in November. I didn't even know there was a primary right now." And so just getting that information out is critical. Number two, then it gets to candidate information. And this is where it's going to get scary because the candidates are battling each other, right? I mean, they're fighting. And so there's a lot of opportunity for misinformation to penetrate in. And so having reliable sources, whether it's someone like a Latino Victory, an organization that people trust, they know the name. I think having that branding go out, not necessarily to endorse a candidate always, but just to tell people what the issues are is very important because people don't know where to look for information. They don't know what they can trust. And so I think having trusted messengers, having community-based organizations is critical. Those are sort of the last remaining brands that people trust. They don't necessarily trust Democrat or Republican. They don't necessarily trust CNN. And so having community-based organizations, that's what we found in our research can be the most helpful.
And the reassurance that our elections are safe and secure.
That's right.
The incidence of fraud is not even a fraction of a percentage point that folks should be concerned. And a lot of the efforts that the administration has put forth and the MAGA Republicans in Congress, which are complicit, as well as, by the way, the courts in some ways, um, are geared really to suppressing the vote. And so I think that the biggest way in which we fight back is by ensuring that our community comes out in full force, and that we get our folks to participate. And
Yeah.
so, Matt, I know we're running into time. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share around the California election, lessons learned, and what people need to know?
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that exact point you just made, Catherine, which is the safety and security of elections. We're getting attacked out here in California. That it's taking too long for our results. And, Trump already stated there was voter fraud. The U.S. attorney that he handpicked is filing a lawsuit against Los Angeles County because Spencer Pratt went from second to third. All of this is absolutely false. The California elections are safe. They're secure. As you said, there have been investigations. There's no evidence, none of fraud. Why does it take long? We have 23 million registered voters, 23 million. That's a lot of ballots to count. Los Angeles County has over 4 million votes that they're trying to sort through. And so these things do take a little bit of time. They're doing it safely and securely to make sure that you signed your ballot, that it came from your house. All of those things that people say voter fraud, that's the reason elections take a few days, provisional ballots. The folks here in California are taking it very seriously. They're counting ballots. It's a public process. It's transparent. You can go down to the Los Angeles County, Orange County, wherever you want to go and watch and observe. And there is a danger to our democracy when we hear these statements, as you said, from MAGA Republicans saying, "Oh, there's fraud. The California elections are fake." It's absolutely untrue. We need to trust the process, whether our candidate wins or loses. You can be assured that the elections are safe and that your vote is being counted here in California and probably in all 50 states. This idea of voter fraud, even the states that, our candidates lose in, we just need to get more votes. It is not voter fraud that is plaguing our democracy. It is these conspiracy theories. That is what is causing harm right now.
And it's our moment. So what we need is for everyone within the community, nuestra comunidad latina, to make sure we participate and that we exercise our rights. Um, Thank you, Matt. One last question. The World Cup starts today.
Aha.
Who are you rooting for?
Okay, well, my beloved Peru did not qualify this year, even though we expanded the number of teams. Unfortunately, we didn't qualify, and so here in Los Angeles, I would say I have to cheer for all of my friends and the number one team, which is Mexico, of course, out here in Los Angeles. I'm actually going to catch the game today. In a couple of hours is the kickoff game
Nice.
to
Lucky
see
you.
Mexico. So we'll be cheering for them. Of course, Estados Unidos también. And I always, find in my heart to cheer for all of our teams from Latin America. And so hopefully they have a good tournament. We can see our Latino stars and players do well. But I've got to say, here in Los Angeles, the number one team definitely Mexico.
And I'm cheering for all the fans. I'm more of a basketball girl. I got to root for my New York Knicks.
Yes,
But
basketball time for New Yorkers.
yes, for sure. But certainly I am excited for fútbol y bueno, seguimos en la lucha. Thank you so much, Matt Barreto. For those who joined, thank you. This is Latino Victory Substack. Latino Victory is a national organization with one singular mission, which is to build Latino political power so that our voices and values are reflected in the policies that move our country forward. Thank you for your support. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.